I want to give you a very brief overview of theology at Unisa, starting with just how theology is situated within Unisa, what it is made up of, and running through some of the qualifications being offered. So the first important thing to understand is that theology at Unisa forms part of the College of Human Sciences. So theology is not a faculty on its own. It forms part of the broader human sciences. There are sometimes students studying towards other qualifications that are taking theology modules as part of their qualifications, and there are sometimes students studying theology in combination with a different field. But generally, just being within the human sciences mean that we find our own identity as part of this broad set of fields that think about the human in society. We do that quite particularly around questions of religion, and in a very specific way around questions of the Christian tradition, Christian religion, and the churches where a large portion of our society are engaging with, to think through what does it mean for people that are inside those faith communities to form part of society as part of this broader social collective. Now, theology at Unisa is runs across different departments, but those are mostly administrative distinctions. Primarily, the distinctions run academically around different disciplines. And if you register for postgraduate studies, or even during your modules studying an undergraduate qualification, you will run into these different disciplines and their distinctions and the various contributions that they make to theology as a whole. On the one hand, you start out with the biblical sciences, so Old Testament, New Testament, studying the scriptures. At Unisa, the New Testament flows into the other writings of the early church, so it's New Testament and other early Christian writings that are being studied there in the context of the early Christian tradition and its formation. We move into church history, the broad expanse of how the church developed over the centuries. Systematic theology is often what people think of when they think of theology, the place where we think around questions around God and faith, and the way we structure our thinking around that, the way different questions that emerged over the centuries came together, and how Christians see various difficult and sometimes not so difficult questions. Theological ethics is the place where we then ask those questions in terms of how we should live and how we should think through the complicated questions facing society today. Practical theology and missiology, then disciplines that study the way churches and faith communities are functioning internally, how they structure themselves, but also in terms of their role within society as agents of change, as working for change within society. So moving from the biblical studies through the history, through our concepts around theology and God and faith, into our practical questions around ethical questions or church questions and structuring the church and church activities or the activities of faith communities and how that impact on the broader society. Those are the various parts of theology at Unisa. The Bachelor's of Theology is built up around three majors. So on the one hand, we have Scripture Studies, so you can hear all the New Testament with some early Christian history embedded within that. Then we have Theology, so that's a lot of church history, but also then the questions around theology, God, faith, hope, salvation. How do we think about the church more conceptually? Those are found in theology. And then ministry, where we move towards these more practical questions of how do we run churches, how do we think about church's role within society, and how do we think about some of these ethical questions. So three majors. You end up doing two of those if you study the Bachelor's of Theology at Unisa. The Bachelor's of Theology at Unisa is then ended with two exit level modules. So the one is a capstone module that integrates all of these different disciplines and all of these different majors into a coherent whole. So saying, now that we've done the Bachelor's of Theology, how do we put it together, and where does that take us in terms of our further work within society, within faith communities, within our communities more general. And the other one, a research in theology module, that is really the stepping stone towards postgraduate studies and the further studies within theology. Once you step outside of the Bachelor's of Theology, then you have your honors qualifications, which is the whole spread of all these disciplines already mentioned, together with Christian spirituality as an 8th discipline. You can study any of those. You can also do an honors in Christian leadership alongside those, and then you can continue from the honors. You can articulate into a master's program. We offer the full range of research master's programs across all of those disciplines, and then from the master's you can continue with a PhD, really contributing new knowledge, thinking about questions that others haven't thought about yet, and doing a research doctoral qualification in any of these disciplines, and various specializations within that. Now, you have to understand, at the University of South Africa, this is a fully ecumenical faculty, so we have students from the whole range of churches within the South African context, and students that are not bound to faith communities, that might just be interested in theology, that might not even describe themselves necessarily as Christian. But most of our churches come then from this whole range of churches, ranging from African initiated churches through to various Protestant churches, Pentecostal and Charismatic churches, Catholic churches, the whole range of churches that are found within the South African society have students studying at Unisa. And we try to create an environment where we can really bring together students from across all these divides and put them into conversation with each other. Obviously, if you study at Unisa, you are studying in an open distance learning environment, which means that you will most likely still be based within your context, based within your community. Many of our students are actively working within their faith communities while they are studying theology, and we really see that as a strength, that you are thinking from where you are working already, from where you're already faced with questions in your community, in society, in faith communities, and you are getting the opportunity to think through those more academically, and to do that together with students across all these divides within our society, urban and rural, and richer congregations and poorer congregations, and congregations from all these different perspectives, whether it's small independent traditions or whether it's large denominations. We want to bring students together quite explicitly across all these divides and say, speak to each other, engage with each other, and let's learn to do theology together, to do it collectively within a South and Southern African context, and then beyond that within the globe, but very much coming from the South and Southern African perspective and the contribution that it can make towards theology.